Working on a video about Appalachian geography, we found a scheduled Amtrak stop serving a population of 5. The stop is still active. The train comes through 3 times a week in both directions. Nobody is there to meet it. That was the first one. One name led to another. 13 places later, here is what we found. A Swiss village has been burning an effigy of winter in the same hollow since 1869, with 59 people watching and no road sign to find it. A dam that killed 125 people on a Saturday morning in 1972. A company that called it an act of God. A Pennsylvania town where the ground has been on fire since 1962, with enough coal left to burn for 250 more years. But the one that stopped everything, the one that made this feel necessary, that is number 1. Stay with us. If this is something you want more of, subscribe. Today, 13 places in Appalachia where people vanish without a trace. Number 13. Helvetia, West Virginia. West Virginia, intending to build a colony modeled on the villages they had left behind. The mountains cooperated. Roads stayed poor for a century. When modern highways finally came through the surrounding counties, Helvetia had no reason to connect to them, and did not. There are 59 people here. The nearest city of any size, Elkmont, is 35 to 40 miles away on winding mountain roads. No gas station, no grocery store, no reliable cell signal. There is a post office, zip code 26224, and a restaurant called the Hütte, open on weekends. Every February, the village holds the Fastnacht celebration, a pre-Lenten Swiss carnival brought directly from Europe. They burn an effigy of winter in the town square. The same ritual, the same hollow, 155 years running. No sign tells you how to find this place. That appears to be by choice. 2 brothers and a friend saw a bright object cross the sky and land on a farm in Braxton County. They told their mother, Kathleen May, a local beautician. A National Guardsman named Eugene Lemon joined them. 7 witnesses climbed the hill together. What they reported: a pulsing red light, and then something approximately 10 feet tall, with a spade-shaped head, glowing eyes, and a dark metallic body. It hissed. An acrid mist surrounded it. They ran. Several reported burning eyes and throat irritation for days afterward. The U.S. Air Force investigated through Project Blue Book. They found nothing. No physical evidence. No explanation was ever produced. The Flatwoods monster remains officially unclassified and unidentified. 70 years of investigation have not explained what 7 witnesses encountered on that hillside, or why some of them were sick for days after. The Flatwoods Monster Museum operates on Main Street. The hill is where it was. Nobody knows what was on it. Number 11. Dante, Virginia. The company left. The people stayed. Just barely. Start with the name. The Clinchfield Coal Company named this place after the poet who wrote about descending into hell. The locals have never accepted that framing. They call it Daint. Rhymes with paint, not with the poet. The Clinchfield Coal Company built Dante in the early 1900s in the narrow hollows of Russell County. They constructed everything: housing, schools, a hospital, a pharmacy, a theater, a baseball field. Workers arrived from Hungary, Poland, and Greece. By the 1930s, more than 4,000 people lived here, making it the largest community in the county. CSX terminated rail operations at Dante Yard, severing the last commercial link. The 2020 census counted 572 residents, down from 4,000. The company buildings are still standing. Most are empty. Look at Dante from above and the logic is visible. One road enters the hollow between sheer mountain ridges. Rows of identical company houses line both sides of the railroad tracks, and the road dead ends at the base of Hazel Mountain. 5. This is the town we found first on the map. A scheduled Amtrak stop serving 5 permanent residents. The train comes through 3 days a week. Step off the platform and there are no taxis, no restaurants, no cell service. The next train is 3 days away. At its peak in the early 1900s, Thurmond processed more railroad freight tonnage than Cincinnati, Ohio, and Richmond, Virginia combined. A town in a narrow river gorge, accessible only by rail, was moving more cargo than 2 major American cities. The depot handled over 95,000 passengers per year. Thurmond was a dry town. No alcohol permitted within the borough. The response to that was the Dunglen Hotel, built across the New River, which by local legend hosted the world's longest continuous poker game, approximately 14 years, running from around 1900 until the First World War. The Dunglen burned in 1930. The National Bank closed in 1931. Diesel locomotives replaced steam engines in the late 1940s and 1950s, and Thurmond stopped being necessary. Diesel engines do not need coal. They do not need water stops. The reason for the town's existence simply ended. The 1904 depot still stands. The National Park Service manages it now. Over 20 original structures remain. The Amtrak Cardinal still stops here, 3 times a week, for 5 people. 5. Number 9. Lynch, Kentucky. The world's largest coal town. Then the world forgot it. U.S. Steel needed coal for its blast furnaces in Gary, Indiana. In 1917, a subsidiary called U.S. Coal and Coke purchased 19,000 acres in Harlan County and built a city from scratch, naming it after the company's first president. 000 residents, and was documented as the largest coal company town in the world. The mining complex employed more than 4,000 workers. U.S. Steel built everything. Over 1,000 housing units, a hospital, a movie theater, a NIMCA, a commissary operating as the largest department store for hundreds of miles. Workers came from Hungary, Italy, and Poland, and from across Black America. Schools. By 1950, the community still held nearly 8,000 people. By 1996, the railroad to Lynch was abandoned. The 2020 census counted 658 residents. Consider what that means. The steel in some of the most prominent American structures was smelted using coal dug by men who lived in houses they did not own, in a town they had not founded, in a county they could not easily leave. The company sold the town to those men in the 1950s, after the valuable part was already gone. Portal 31, the original mine entrance, is a museum now. The tours go underground. Number 8. Elkmont, Tennessee. The resort where the leases ran out. Here's the detail that stopped us in the research. The prominent Knoxville families who owned vacation cottages in Elkmont did not simply lose them when the government arrived. They kept using them. The Great Smoky Mountains National Park was formally established in 1934, and the federal government acquired the land. But cabin owners received long-term leases allowing continued use. Some leases ran for decades. The last ones expired in 1992. When they expired, the families drove out for the final time. The buildings stayed behind. Elkmont began as a logging camp in 1901. The Little River Lumber Company stripped the hills clean within a decade. But the railroad infrastructure remained, and Knoxville families discovered they could ride a train into the mountains to escape the summer heat. The Appalachian Club formed in 1910. The Wonderland Club followed in 1912. The Wonderland Hotel operated for years before the Park Service demolished it in 2005. What remains today are over 80 historic structures in varying states of decay. Porches sagging, roofs collapsing, rhododendron pressing through the gaps. The NPS manages the historic district. In late May, if you win the access lottery the Park Service now holds due to demand, you can stand in the dark at Elkmont and watch the synchronous fireflies. Thousands of Photinus carolinus insects flashing in perfectly coordinated waves through the trees. They appear, they vanish, on a loop, all night. The fireflies do not know the families are gone. They still show up every year. Number 7. Brown Mountain, North Carolina. The lights that have no explanation. In 1913, the Charlotte Daily Observer published a report describing lights rising above a ridge in Burke County with what a witness called punctual regularity. First around 7:30 in the evening, then again near 10. The article noted that the lights had already been observed for years by members of the Morganton Fishing Club, who had been ridiculed for saying so. The U.S. Geological Survey sent an investigator, D.B. Sterrett, to Brown Mountain in October 1913. He concluded the lights were locomotive headlights from the Southern Railway. Then came the 1916 floods. The Catawba Valley flooded badly enough to knock out every railroad bridge in the area. No trains ran for weeks. Witnesses and reporters went to the viewing points expecting silence. The lights appeared on schedule. A second USGIA's investigation in 1922, conducted by George R. Mansfield, concluded the lights had multiple causes: automobile headlights, brush fires, stationary sources. Mansfield also acknowledged that not all reported sightings were accounted for. His report said so. The first written record of the Brown Mountain Lights predates trains, automobiles, and electric light by more than a century. German engineer Gerard Wildebrom noted the lights in 1771. Cherokee oral tradition holds that the lights are the spirits of women searching for warriors killed in battle on the mountain, a tradition believed to stretch back to around 1200 CE. They have kept their appointment with that ridge for 250 years. No explanation has changed that. If you are following this rabbit hole with us, drop a like. It helps more people find these stories. Let us know in the comments if any of these places mean something to you. Sometimes the people who comment have been there. Sometimes they grew up there. We read everything. Number 6 is next. Number 6. Cade's Cove, Tennessee. 700 people. 150 years. 2 weeks to get out. Still stands in the Cove, one of the oldest surviving structures in the region. By the mid-1800s, the community had grown to several hundred people, multiple churches, a grist mill, a cantilever barn, 5 generations of families who had cleared fields and buried their dead in this valley ringed by mountains. The Civil War divided them, some Unionist, some Confederate. The Cove survived. What it could not survive was the federal government's decision to build a national park. Tennessee began acquiring land through eminent domain in the 1920s and 1930s. The Great Smoky Mountains National Park was formally established in 1934. Families were given small settlements and told to leave. Some residents received life tenancy, permission to stay until they died. Most left anyway. The last full-time resident, John W. Oliver, a descendant of the original settler, left in 1937. The government preserved the buildings. 3 historic churches survive. The Primitive Baptist Church, built in 1827, still holds a service every September, still officiated by a minister, still attended, still following the same liturgy as 2 centuries ago. The congregation drives in from outside, worships in the building their ancestors built, and drives back out. 2 million people visit Cade's Cove every year. Nobody lives there. Every September, for one Sunday, the community exists again for a few hours. Then it disappears. Number 5. Buffalo Creek, West Virginia. The day the company called it an act of God. February 26, 1972. A Saturday morning in Logan County. Pittston Coal Company had built a dam above the Buffalo Creek Hollow out of coal mine refuse. Gob piles stacked high enough to hold back 130 million gallons of coal slurry. His certification read, satisfactory. In the early hours of that morning, after days of heavy rain, 3 impoundment dams failed in sequence. What hit the hollow was a 25-foot wall of black water. In some communities, the only warning was a neighbor running and screaming. Most had no warning at all. The wave swept 16 miles. It destroyed 507 houses, 44 trailers, and 30 businesses. It killed 125 people and left more than 4,000 homeless, nearly the entire population of a dozen communities that had existed in that hollow for 60 years. At least 6 bodies were never found. 1 turned up weeks later in the Ohio River near Paducah, Kentucky. Pittston Coal's official legal position described the event as an act of God, citing concerns about the state's image. Pittston eventually settled with 625 survivors for $13.5 million, less than $21,000 per plaintiff. The inspector who declared the dam satisfactory was never prosecuted. The company continued to operate. Here's the thing about the phrase act of God. Legally, it describes an event no one could have anticipated or prevented. But residents and outside observers had raised concerns about this dam's stability for years before it failed. Documentation of those concerns exists in the historical record. A memorial park near Man, West Virginia stands where 12 communities once were. The creek still runs through the hollow. The communities are gone, replaced by trees and grass and the same water that carried everything away. The dam that killed 125 people was built from the waste produced by the work those families had done for 60 years. Pittston did not mention that in its legal filings. Number 4. Saltville, Virginia. 14,000 years of history. One company poisoned all of it. Human beings have been coming to Saltville for approximately 14,000 years. Archaeologists have found evidence of Paleo-Indian presence at the salt marshes here, along with the tool-marked bones of mastodons and ground sloths. This is one of the oldest continuously used sites in North America. The salt made the place worth fighting over. During the Civil War, Saltville's salt works were critical to the Confederacy, by 1863 supplying salt to much of the South. Union General Burbridge sent 5,200 troops to destroy them on October 2, 1864. The Confederate defenders, numbering around 2,800, held. After the Union withdrawal, Confederate soldiers, described in historical records as mostly militia irregulars, went across the battlefield and killed an estimated 50 wounded black Union prisoners from the 5th U.S. Colored Cavalry, left behind when the force retreated. The event is called the Saltville Massacre. Confederate guerrilla Champ Ferguson was convicted of war crimes for these killings and executed in 1865. Matheson Alkali Works arrived, and Saltville became a company town for industrial chemistry. The company, which eventually became Olin Chemical, produced chlorine gas using mercury as part of the manufacturing process. The mercury waste was discharged directly into the North Fork of the Holston River for decades. At the height of operations, parents gave liquid mercury to their children to play with. Shiny, slippery, fascinating. It was the same mercury entering the river. Olin Chemical closed its Saltville plant in 1972. The North Fork of the Holston River is an EPA Superfund site. The fish downstream are not safe to eat. The Museum of Middle Appalachians sits in town today. Mastodon fossils in one room, Civil War history in the next. The river runs past it, clear and cold-looking, carrying what it carries. 14,000 years of people coming to this place for what it could offer. The last company to arrive left mercury in the sediment and drove away. The bullet holes are still in the walls. The brick buildings of downtown Matewan carry the marks from what happened on May 19, 1920. They are not hard to find. The Mine Wars Museum stands 100 feet from where Albert Feltz, one of the most feared private detectives in Appalachia, fell dead in the street. On the morning of that day, 13 detectives from the Baldwin Feltz Agency arrived by train. The Stone Mountain Coal Company had sent them to evict striking miners and their families from company housing. Under an intermittent drizzle, they removed several families at gunpoint and set their belongings in the road. That afternoon, Matewan Police Chief Sid Hatfield confronted the detectives at the train depot over a disputed arrest warrant. What followed lasted approximately 2 minutes. 10 people were dead. 7 Baldwin Feltz detectives, including brothers Albert and Lee Feltz, Mayor Cabell Testerman, who had sided with the miners, and 2 miners, Hatfield and 17 other defendants, were tried for murder in early 1921. All were acquitted. On August 1, 1921, Sid Hatfield was shot and killed on the courthouse steps in Welch, West Virginia. He was 28. The killers were Baldwin Feltz detectives. They claimed self-defense. They were acquitted as well. What followed was the Battle of Blair Mountain. 10 to 15,000 miners marching on Logan County, confronting a private army funded by the coal companies. It was the largest armed labor uprising in the United States since the Civil War. Federal troops deployed. Army biplanes flew over the mountain. The miners surrendered after 12 days. None of this appears in most American history textbooks. The events were effectively suppressed from the national record for decades, as Smithsonian Magazine reported in 2017. Some history does not erase easily. It just waits in the walls. Number 2. Centralia, Pennsylvania. The ground is still burning. The people are gone. On May 7, 1962, the Centralia Borough Council authorized burning the town landfill before Memorial Day, standard practice at the time. The fire found an exposed coal seam and entered the underground mine network beneath the borough. It has been burning ever since. For 2 decades, the fire spread while residents raised concerns and government agencies moved slowly. Carbon monoxide seeped into basements. Steam rose from cracks in the sidewalks. Then, on February 14, 1981, 12-year-old Todd Domboski was cutting through a yard near his grandmother's house when the earth opened beneath him. The sinkhole was 350 degrees Fahrenheit at the base. The carbon monoxide level was sufficient to cause death within minutes. Todd grabbed tree roots on the way down and held on. His cousin Eric Wolfgang appeared and pulled him out in under 60 seconds. 2 years later, Congress appropriated $42 million to relocate Centralia's residents. Most left. Pennsylvania condemned the remaining properties in 1992 and acquired them through eminent domain. A small group of holdouts won the legal right to stay for the duration of their lives. When they die, the land reverts to the state. By 2010, the population had dropped from roughly 1,000 to 10. By 2017, the census recorded 5. The zip code, 17927, was revoked in 2002. Route 61 cracked and buckled from the underground heat, became known as Graffiti Highway, and in April 2020, the state covered it with dirt. The underground fire has spread to approximately 400 acres. Geologists estimate it has enough coal to burn for 250 more years. The hillside cemetery is still maintained. People still come to bury their dead there, in a borough that officially no longer exists. The town is gone, but the dead still come home. Number 1. Point Pleasant, West Virginia. The Mothman saw it coming. The Ohio River at Point Pleasant is wide and slow in winter. Fog comes off the water in the mornings and settles on the surface for hours. The old bridge site is marked now. A plaque, a mural on the flood wall at 6th Street, a parking lot where the approach road once ran. Standing there on a December afternoon and looking out at the water, you are looking at a river that does not give things back. Kathy Bias is still down there. So is Maxine Turner. For 13 months before December 15, 1967, residents of Point Pleasant and the surrounding area reported seeing something in the dark. The first sighting came on November 15, 1966, near the old World War II munitions plant at the edge of town, the TNT area, a cluster of concrete ammunition igloos set back in the trees near the river bend. 2 couples reported encountering a winged figure approximately 7 feet tall, with a wingspan of around 10 feet and eyes that glowed red. Over the following 13 months, more than 100 witnesses in the area reported the same or similar creature. The accounts were consistent across independent reporters. Investigators documented the sightings. The Silver Bridge had been standing since 1928. It was an I-bar chain suspension design, with no structural redundancy. One failed component would bring down the entire span. Residents had complained for years that it swayed under traffic. No serious inspection had been conducted in nearly 4 decades. On December 15, 1967, at approximately 5 in the evening, the bridge was carrying rush hour traffic when a sound witnesses described as a gunshot preceded the rout collapse. The entire span folded in under 20 seconds. 32 vehicles entered the Ohio River. 64 people went with them. 46 of them did not come back. 2 of the 46 were never recovered from the river. Kathy Bias, Maxine Turner. They entered the water on the evening of December 15, 1967, and the river kept them. The Mothman sightings stopped the same night. No confirmed sightings since. The collapse produced one direct consequence that outlasted everything else: the Federal Aid Highway Act of 1968, which established the National Bridge Inspection Program. Every bridge in the United States is now inspected on a federal schedule because of what happened at Point Pleasant. The cause of the collapse was a defect 0.1 inches deep in a single I-bar, a flaw that had gone undetected for 39 years. A 12-foot steel Mothman statue stands in downtown Point Pleasant. The Mothman Museum is open daily. Every September, the town holds the Mothman Festival. Whatever appeared in Point Pleasant during those 13 months, warning, coincidence, or something without a category yet, it stopped appearing the night the bridge came down. 2 of those 46 people have been in that river for almost 60 years. There are more threads. There always are. If pressed to name one from this list, and it is not an easy call, it would be Matewan. Not because the story is the largest, because the bullet holes are still in those walls, and most people have never been told any of it. Which of these stopped you, and which thread should we follow next? Subscribe if you want to find out.